The most important thing is I'm a grandpa. That's my big thing now. When you can narrow that down and really focus on those things that matter, you have a lot more time, first of all, and then the time that you spend is much more valuable. I became the EKY Guy, but Ikigai, and it means life purpose. So I've been doing the creator thing since I was a kid, probably.
Feel free to answer it or not. Do you make money out of content creation?
Everybody you meet is interesting if you'll take the time to get to know them. I met my wife through radio.
These podcasts that you're doing, you're having conversations that are really interesting. I have been trying to schedule this conversation with David Marlow for a while, and it has been on me, not on you, sir. I know you have always been willing to do it because you are one of the persons that has been like that guidance path that I want to follow. You're like somebody that I admire, somebody that I look up because everything that you say that you have done, and because there's something around you, David, and I don't know if anybody else have told you about this, but there's something like it's charming, it's energetic, it's positive. So thank you very much for being here, and welcome.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and thank you for the kind words. I'm excited to have a chance to talk with you today.
David, tell me, and tell the audience about you. Who's David Marlow, and how did you end up here in my channel?
Yeah, I think probably the most important thing is I'm a grandpa. That's my big thing now.
That's
I have
great.
four awesome grandchildren, and I always tell people that having grandkids is like the first time in my life that something really, really cool happened that I didn't have to work for or pay for. It's like almost everything else in my life I had to work hard for or had to fund or something. And grandkids are just like this amazing gift given to you for having made it this long. So it's a pretty good gig, but yeah, that's so I'm joking, of course, but I mean that's
are you the kind of grandpa that you allow them to do whatever they want, and then you pass them to your children and say, "Hey, here they are."
so my wife recently it came up in our memories on Facebook, but this was a conversation she and I had. She said, "You did you just let Easton is our grandson, Easton dump a bowl of Cheerios on the floor?" And I said, "Yeah." She was I not supposed to? And she's like, "No, you're not supposed to." That's kind of like, oh well, he was just playing with them, and we wanted to do that, so why not? So yeah,
So, David, besides this part, which is your most important part, your family and the way you talk and the way you tell stories about them, you also are writing every day on LinkedIn. You have a newsletter, weekly newsletter that I read. You have a podcast. You are doing consultancy. You are running every day or every other day. I don't keep track of that. How do you do it? How do you live your life with such intensity, and how do you find time to do everything?
sure. Well, I think the biggest thing is understanding what things matter and what things are important to you. I will say I'm almost maniacal about my application of the 80/20 principle,
Mhm.
because so little in our life really matters, but we get hung up on it. We get caught up in it and into it and distracted by it. And when you can narrow that down and really focus on those things that matter, you have a lot more time, first of all, and then the time that you spend is much more valuable, both in the satisfaction you get as well as the value to your life, to your business, whatever. But I've been a practitioner of like continuous improvement and lean philosophies and 80/20 for 3 decades, and when you get to have this color hair, you applied it a few times. And,
At least you have her. I
that's
don't
true.
I don't have much to
It's like,
say about it.
well, we'll go with we'll go with this hair. How's that? It's just as white as this, but yeah, yeah.
um,
So I think that's the key thing, really.
yeah, and David, mm, I found you on LinkedIn as the EKY Guy. And when I read the information or your banner, I was like, "What is this? What's Ikigai and who's the Ikigai?"
Yeah, yeah. So ikigai is a Japanese philosophy. It's a combination word. It's iki and kai, really, and then through a quirk in Japanese, it's combined, but ikigai, and it means life purpose. And if many people get hung up on ikigai, they'll find it on the internet, and it's like this four circle Venn diagram that's about what you're passionate about, what you're good at, what you can be paid for, and or what the world needs and what you can be paid for. But I teach a different aspect of it because that's very career centric, and to me,
Hmm.
it's really about who you are at your deepest levels, why you're here, and doing all of that in harmony with whatever you're doing. And I became the Ikigai guy. I did not give myself that moniker. A friend of mine gave me that when my
Who?
corp. Ken Gordon actually is his name. Ken Gordon, brilliant writer and super guy. And if you check him out on LinkedIn, he's occasionally playing piano in parks in Boston.
Oh.
Just a very interesting guy. He. I got to know Ken through some work that we were doing with his company in Boston, the company that I was at as I finished my corporate career. We became
Hmm.
friends, and he would just send me articles. We were talking about something. He'd send me an article, and I'd read it, and like, wow, this is really good. And then I finally noticed after like about three or four articles that he had written them, and they were in, you
Hmm.
know, Forbes and the New Yorker and the Atlantic, and I'm like, he's like a real deal. I said, dude, you're like a real writer. He's like, but yeah, I was just writing on LinkedIn to share ideas and like I do now, really. And
Hmm.
there was no agenda or no prescription. I wasn't trying to market anything, or it was just me sharing me. And because of that, I did that for a while, and I thought, this is a good test to see, how people perceive me, perceive the things I'm sharing, that kind of thing. So I asked some friends for feedback, and this is way before like personal branding was a thing. But I thought, well, what kind of brand am I projecting? And Ken said, well, I don't know about the brand, but you ought to check into Ikigai. I'm like, what's that? He goes, I just check into it. And when I did, I found that that is the thing that has gotten me jazzed forever, and sharing that purpose and helping others live into their gifts and their skills. And so for me, I latched on to that because I could now put a name to what I'd always enjoyed doing,
Hmm.
regardless of what career I was doing, or whether I was being a grandpa or coaching my kids in basketball or whatever. That's what I'm about: is encouraging, empowering, and enabling people to be what they were meant to be. And to so that's how I came upon the official name for it, but I've been living it for many decades.
How did you find your purpose? Or how long it took you to, besides that moment with Ben and recognizing, oh, this has a name, this
Hmm.
there's a definition for this. But how did you find that purpose? Because many of us could spend the whole life just looking around and sitting and saying, oh, what's my purpose, what's my purpose? At least on your end, what was that mm, moment, if any, that trigger your definition of purpose?
Yeah, I think one reason, if you look on my website or the newsletter, you'll see a logo that's like a swirl that's ever tightening,
Hmm.
and I feel like that I use that because I feel like that's the way we approach understanding our ikigai, or our calling, if you will. We have an idea, and as we experience it, gets finer and finer, and we refine it. And so it can take a while. But I help people, and as part of the coaching that I do, as well as some of the consulting I do, is to help people identify that. But the biggest thing is just to be open to those signals. Like I'll often ask people. Well, I had this dog. I'll share a story real quick. I had this dog, and this dog would chase a tennis ball all day long. As often as I would throw it, he would
Mhm.
go chase it until my arm was about to fall off, right? But he'd still want to chase it, and he'd bring it back and would be ever ever more slobbery, and to the point where I didn't want to touch it anymore. And he still wanted to play. And I said, I say to people, think about things in your life that are like that. There are things like that we enjoy doing. For me, writing is one. I can get into it and do it, and I could do it all day, um, and lose total track of time. There are key things like that in our lives that tell us, where our ikigai is, and it's not really. I also push back on the idea of discovering or finding it. It's uncovering
Mhm.
it because it's there. And if you think about it that way, there are a lot more clues in your everyday life that you're kind of uncovering. And I wanted to be a writer from the time I was a little kid, and
Mhm.
everybody that I know that was important to me talked me out of it. and
Mhm.
and not to be mean, I mean,
Yeah.
with all the best of intentions and things like that, but it wasn't until much later that I started getting back to that and really understanding that was a deep part of me and what I needed to be doing, and enjoying it for what it was.
I love the analogy. I love the analogy because it it opens eyes, minds, because it's true. There are certain things that we could do forever, and we're never gonna get tired, and we're gonna keep enjoying them, and that's a great analogy. Um, David, one of the things that I don't know what was first, if this concept of ikigai and how to keep helping people with it, or you started or you were a content creator before, and I'm putting this tag on you, and probably this is a tag that many of us are getting right now. And initially they say like, no, content creator is just the YouTube kids, though we older people are not but we are content creators. We are generating content, we're writing, we are putting videos, audio out there. How did you get into all this? How did you get into a platform like LinkedIn? How did you decide to start? And how were those first moments when you started?
Yeah. Well, my primary motivation for LinkedIn was the platform itself was because I could see changes and things in the company I was working at, and could see that my corporate career probably wasn't going to end the way I'd originally planned. And that the last thing you want to do is start making connections or trying to
Mhm.
make connections when you need a job, right? And so I decided to up my presence on LinkedIn, and just started writing, sharing, and I'll take then a step back. It was really just a new platform for an extension of creativity and things that
Mhm.
I was doing. I had a job where I was a boss, and it was a cubicle area, right? The whole floor was a cubicle, and for some reason, uh, just one of those good fortune things, they had a whiteboard on the wall next to my office, if you will. And so, and they weren't supposed to put any whiteboards on the wall. For some reason, it was up there. And because it was up there, maintenance wouldn't take it down, but nobody else could get one. And so I had the only whiteboard on that whole floor. And I started writing, inspirational quotes. I'd write ideas. People would make observations on the team, and I might say, "Oh, that's a really good thing." And they'd make the whiteboard, and that became kind of a
Mhm.
thing in our team. Like, "Oh, I made the whiteboard." Um, and then people started coming by, like other teams and other people and leaders would come by and read, because I'd try and write something meaningful, as well as maybe even a commentary uh, maybe put a quote up and then write something about it. And so,
Hmm.
so LinkedIn just really became an extension of some of that. And I was doing design work and continuous improvement work, and that always required storytelling and some kind of visual, aid to help. Um, and so it's just kind of an extension of all of that. So I've been doing the creator thing
Hmm.
since I was a kid, probably because I remember I did a story in fifth grade about Columbus, and only I mashed it up with before mashup was a cool thing. I did a mashup story with something else, and it involved spears and people being killed and all kinds of crazy things. It was awful, but my fifth grade teacher was not amused as I was at the mashup that I created. But I mean, I always got a kick out of that, doing a story, making the other kids
Yeah,
laugh, and then storytelling is an integral part, really, of any kind of transformation work you're doing in business because you got to bring people along. You've got to meet them where they are and bring them along. And the best way to do that, is in story. And so LinkedIn just became another platform for that. And I don't know that I came into it thinking of as a creator or the creator. I don't think the creator term was around back then. Um, for a while, to be a creator, you had to have like a notebook, right? You had to carry one of these around all the time. Those were the creators. They were the design people, and I laughed because I studied design at Cornell, and uh,
hmm.
uh, after that, I was like, oh, now I can carry my notebook and be cool.
David, the question, and feel free to answer it or not. Do you make money out of content creation? Because that's the first thing that many people come to different platforms and to come to say, "Oh, I'm going to create content because I'm going to make money just like A, B, C, or this big guy that it's making millions and showing up his Lambos and whatever."
Yeah. Yes and no. I mean, I would say the vast majority of what I create doesn't generate uh, income. I have a newsletter and I have a paid subscription thing there, and I do make some money there. But the majority of it is I'll say a give and an extension of what I want to share and things, and then obviously that builds reputation and that kind of thing, that helps with consulting and stuff like that. But if I were to just say I don't need any more money, I would still do a lot of this. I mean, I'd say the majority of it because I think what I'm sharing is important for people to know. It's fun for me
It
to
is.
share, or it's a combination of those things. And so, in that way, um, I would say that yes and no. But uh, and it's true for a lot of people. So you mentioned my podcast. I appreciate that PodQuest, and my first guest was James Breakwell, who
Hmm.
has a huge following. He's written like 7 books, and family, fun, humor kind of things, and then he's written 2 science fiction books, which I thought was a really interesting compilation. And then he did an illustrated children's book, which is how we connected. But one thing that I noticed with him now, he's got 1 million followers on Twitter, so he's kind of a big deal. And he still has a day job. He still has a regular day job that he works, and he he hopes to someday, be able to make his entire living off of just the
Hmm.
the fun part, the creative part. But he doesn't, and so it's yet he has that outlet, and that's a drive for him, and he connects with it, and it energizes him and fosters his life, the life in him, and so I think it's okay to want to make money off of our creativity. We should, and we have to make a living. All of us want to eat, like every day or most
And
days
drink some
anyway,
coffee.
and drink some coffee. There you go. That's the big thing. That's my 50% of my household budget goes to
Yeah.
coffee. But Yeah, but there's different um, between living your creativity and making a
Mhm.
living from your creativity. You know, and I wouldn't say that they're mutually exclusive, nor are they automatically combined.
I had a conversation with Jason Ellinger, who's a business owner, a fellow producer, and he said something. I'm going to leave it here in a link in this video, so you can check him if you want it. He was saying if you don't have a purpose beyond the money, you're gonna hate what you're going to be doing daily. Sort of his words, but that's the message. And I completely agree with him because just and you just reiterated what he said. If we're doing something for money, sitting in an office or even writing daily just because we want to hit some sort of amount daily, we're going to be miserable.
Yeah,
And that's something that people say, oh no, you're a dreamer, you have to work and enjoy work. And yeah, but there should be a balance and there should be passion or there should be some sort of a joy of what you're doing.
yeah. It has to be, you know, both, right? You have to be able to make a living, and I think especially when it comes to art, you know, we need to think about uh, putting out what we want to put out instead of trying to what do people want, and I know that's a little different than like a
Yeah.
business sense. Now, I think the combination is there. So I want to be able to write about what I want to write about, and I want that audience. Now, I can look to what they want in terms of size and availability and things like that from a business standpoint, from like my newsletter, you know, the format and that kind of thing. But in terms of the content and where my heart is being shared, that's really got to be, you know, what I want to share, whether anybody likes that or not,
Mhm.
you know, in that sense, because you got to be true, you know,
Yeah.
true to yourself. I read about, and I forget the chef's name, but I think it's La Souquette is the name of the restaurant
Hmm.
it's in France. It's like 3 hours outside of Paris. It's way out in the country, but it was a Michelin star, three Michelin star restaurant. And the story that I heard was the chef gave up the Michelin star because he didn't feel like it was restricting him. It wasn't that Michelin star is a good thing, but there are requirements, and the requirements that he was following, he was beginning to run his restaurant to hit those requirements, as
Hmm.
opposed to share the food that he wanted to share. And so he
Hmm.
gave that up so that he could become, you know, the chef that he wanted to be again, and embrace his art. And I thought that was really bold because three Michelin stars, like printing money. I mean, you know, if you got one of
Yeah.
those, there's going to be, but as it turns out, his restaurant is still booked months in advance and full. And he's doing what he wants to do in terms of sharing the kind of food. And I think it has to do with the area that he lives in. He wanted to share, you know, the food available to them and
Yeah.
introduce some things. So at any rate, the short version of that though is that he gave all that up because he wanted to be true to his art, which is why he got into being a chef to begin with.
Yeah, and that happens to many of us in different fields. So, David, I want to talk to you about your podquest, your
Oh,
podcast, but let's take a step back a couple of years ago and let's talk
a
about your
couple.
radio career because you were a DJ on radio. Tell us about it. How did you start and where did you do it?
Yeah, so I was in commercial radio and TV even a little bit. I always say I have a face for radio though, so I did mostly radio. Um,
You have a great voice, though.
oh, thank you. Well, when I was 16 years old, I was
Hmm.
I was crazy enough to think that I might get into broadcasting, and so I happened to live in an area that um, is right in between, like the Chicago, St. Louis, Indianapolis,
Hmm.
Cincinnati markets, and because it's in between, there's not a lot of other cities around, and so there's all these licenses there, and so it became
Hmm.
this kind of hotbed of talent development. It was really a
Yeah.
very competitive broadcast environment. And I walked into an AM FM TV station and applied. And I'm 16 years old, and I think I had a 4.0 in high school at the time. And so I
Oh.
I got a job. I got the job, and I remember years later going to the guy that hired me and saying, "Now that I've been in this business a while, I know that I had no business being in the business. Why did you hire me?" He goes, "Some cocky 16-year-old kid comes into my station and thinks he's going to be working. I wanted to find out what you were all about, so I hired you." that's that's how I got started. But yeah, he was Fred Morris Peavy was his name. He's passed away now, but really good guy and taught me. So I lived in central Indiana, and
Mhm.
there's a colloquial accent of we would say W instead of W. And he goes, "You work at WTHI AM, FM, and TV. W." And he he set me into a studio and gave me a big reel-to-reel tape and said, "Until this runs out, I want you to sit and say W, W, W in the right way, and then I want you to listen back to it." And so I did, and I to this day I say W correctly, thanks to Fred
So
Peavy.
it worked.
It worked. Uh,
So how long were you in radio?
so 7 years I was in radio,
Wow.
yeah, and did news for a while too. I was in high school. I did the overnight
Hmm.
news for a while, and so I would go to school all day, and then in the evening I was in like band and stuff like that, and I was doing that, or I
Hmm.
was dating somebody or something, and then at midnight I would go into the station and do my overnight news, and then go back to high school the next day. Sometimes I slept, but not very often. And yeah, I did that for a while, and then I got through a whole series of accidents of timing. Got became a disc jockey then too, and did that for a number of years, and did commercials, and did when I was doing news, I was also doing TV because I would take the camera out
Hmm.
and do an on the spot thing and stuff. And yeah, I was, like I said, 16, 17 years old. I remember I went to one crash. There was like a motorcycle crash. That's not funny, but there's a funny part of the
Yeah.
story. Um, and I was interviewing the police officer, and he goes, "Oh, you might want to move." And I'm like, "What?" And I look down. I'm like standing in blood all over my shoes and all kinds of
Oh.
stuff. And it's like, I think I was 17 at the time or something. I said, "Yeah, yeah, I'll move."
Yeah, you
Yeah.
were. That means that you
So
were really focused on what you were doing
I
for the
guess
interview.
getting the great story from him, right? But yeah, yeah.
David, and you put that on pause because you enlisted. Thank you for your service for
Uh,
all those years that you served. Did you ever think that you were going to come back to do audiovisual, to do the new version of radio that we could call podcast, if you want to call it that way?
Yeah, no, I didn't. And taking it, I'll link it to the Guy thing that we were talking about earlier. I saw that almost as a failure because
Mm,
I did that for so long, and then it didn't really work out the way I'd hoped. And I mean, I decided to leave radio. Wasn't no,
mhm,
nobody left me or anything like that. But I I wanted a different life than what I was seeing, and for a long time I looked at that as like a lost 7 years.
mm,
Um, and now I would say it was like one of the great blessings to me, both the professionalism it taught me. I mean, again, being 16 years old, I'm in an environment with 30-year-old, men and women who this is the life they want. This is what they've been doing for years.
mm,
Some of them had gone to college for it, things like that. And I learned professionalism. This isn't, some PUD job some 16-year-old gets. You're on the radio. Everybody hears what you're doing. You know, like you mess up a hamburger at McDonald's, somebody might yell at you, but big deal, right? You 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 do something stupid or bad on the air, and everybody in town could hear you, right?
yeah.
And so it taught me that. The speaking that I do now, the all of that, I've done big conference keynotes and things like that obviously had helped me. But then to your point, what I love about where we're at today is now it's come back full circle, and I'm doing the podcast and all of that kind of thing. And all that experience is still serving me. And I'm doing it in a way that I never would have been able to do, way back in the day, back when we played real live records and things like that.
The- that run, go to the bathroom, but come back on time because you need to change the song
That's right.
before it finishes.
Bathroom songs is very important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I did country radio for a number of years.
Oh,
And I did country, I did album rock, I did all kinds of
yeah.
formats. And country was hard because at the time, the average country song was 2.5 minutes.
Ouch.
And so, whereas album rock, you could put an album on, and go down the street and get something to eat
Yeah.
and come back, right? But yeah, the you had to be quick. If you were going to take a bathroom break, you had to be quick in country music.
Yeah, I think, and maybe for the younger ones that are watching this interview, back then there were no playlists, obviously, so everything was
No,
a physical vinyl that you have to play one, prepare the other one, and maybe
right?
have obviously a playlist that you wrote on your notebook or maybe a piece of paper. Did you do a piece of paper when you were in a hurry?
Oh
And then
yeah.
you selected, or were you organized like every day that you had your playlist prepared and printed or
Well,
whatever?
so most of the stations I worked at, we had a programmer. I mean, then we had a guy that was his
Hmm.
job, and there was we had a clock. We call it a clock. It was just a sheet with a drawing of a clock on it.
Yeah.
You'd come out of the news, and you'd have to play the jingle or whatever, and then you'd play a certain type of song. It was usually an upbeat song that was short because 5 minutes on the news at 7.5 minutes, that's the quarter hour of the quarter hour, right?
Hmm.
And from a rating standpoint, as long as people were listening through that, you got credit for them. So you didn't want any turn off. So you don't want any commercials until after the 7.5 minute mark. And then you'd play commercials. You come out of that and you'd have another type of song. And then all of those were on rotations. So that you
Mm.
didn't play, they called it, what they call it, the school bus driver protocol. You didn't want the school bus driver hitting the corner at the same time every day and hearing the same song, right?
Mm.
Or people driving to work or whatever. It was all the same.
Yeah.
We had little 45s in little sheaths, and then uh, like medical tape on there, and then we'd write we'd write on the thing when it was last played. So if it was played at 7:10 a.m. Yesterday, it can't be played at 7:10 a.m. again today or for three
Yeah.
days. And then you had a top song, and you had a certain song. And back then we even had, like, in country, we weren't allowed to play. There were so few female country artists at the time that they wouldn't
Yeah.
let us play back to back female artists.
Oh,
Yeah, which, I mean, that would seem arcane today, but at the
yes.
time, most of the audience for that were guys in pickup trucks, right?
Hmm.
And so they didn't want to hear too many Dolly Partons or the others at the
Yeah,
time.
back to
Now that
back.
now I think that's probably not true, but anyway,
Yeah.
it was interesting because we had to find a way to be creative within that structure, and even sometimes just picking those back to back songs. I always loved having a segue of the music fading and the other one hitting and it blending, right? So picking those songs. So we're trying to pick a song and hit all those categories and say something clever and adjust for the for the idiosyncratic behavior of the turntables. Like some of those turntables, some of them were faster than others in terms of their ramp up. So we actually had like little tick marks on the turntable itself, and you would cue the record to the needle, edge of the needle, and then back it up a certain amount so that when you hit it, the lag would catch it and it was full speed by the time it hit the needle. And there'd be
Wow.
different things. So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I don't know that anybody deals with today. But yeah, back then no digital music. It was all analog and quite manual.
But there's a big market for analog still,
Well,
vinyl,
yeah.
and so there's
Well,
a big market. It's maybe not the same. The turntables are not the same, but
they're
we
better, I'm
I'm one
sure.
of those who still enjoys that sound, that particular sound.
Well, the waveform, right? It's more of a spike wave on the analog, whereas you get the flat square wave, which doesn't have the noise on it in the digital, formats or the
Hmm.
downloads, but you don't get the nuance of the music. And so a fresh vinyl actually is better quality sound from a fidelity standpoint than digital. They just wear out after a while, and but yeah, everything old is new again, right?
Yes, it is, and making money too,
Yeah, there you go.
because those vinyls these days are so expensive. I have here in my house. I bought some vinyls like online. You can go and buy 100 old vinyls for $10 or for $3, and those of them, some of them are still in good shape, and the sound is it's particular. I like big band music and
Oh yeah.
music for that time, and some of it sounds very good still. So and people are making money even out of those old ones that nobody's listening uh, anymore.
Mhm.
David, let's talk about PodQuest. And this podcast that you're doing, you're having conversations that are really interesting. We're going to leave the details in the description of this video so people can download and can, because there are two things that I like about your podcast. One, the three. One, the topics that you pick, probably two, the people. I would say the people is first and then the topic. And three, I joked about your voice, but there's something about voices that to me are they are they capture you. And when you are listening to a podcast, a voice like mine might not be the most attractive or the most capturing for the audience, but your voice when you're doing a podcast is like, wow, this guy should be doing commercials, should be doing audiobooks, should be doing many things. So tell us about your podcast, where people can find it and what's behind it.
Yeah. So it started with the idea that, we're all on a quest. I mean, that's why I named it PodQuest. And when I speak of the quest idea, it's like the idea of within a question is the word quest. And when we're actually listening, when we're asking those questions of others and then listening to those people, we're getting to know them at a deeper level and getting to know ourselves a little better at a deeper level. And I want to, in this podcast, to create that kind of environment where it's really a deep understanding of each other and sharing ideas and coming to know each other in a way that's not just, hey, what do you do for a living, that kind of thing.
Mm,
It's getting to know that person, because I found, especially in some of the design work that I did, that everybody you meet is interesting if you'll take the time to get to know them. They're living a life. They've done things that they've you've never thought about doing. Like, I mean, you look at this guy and you might see this guy grocery shopping and think, oh, that's just some old guy. Well, I was a disc jockey and I was a Marine and I've done a lot of things, right? And people, everybody's like that. They all have a fascinating story if you're willing to take the time to get to know them. And so the idea of PodQuest is that quest. We're on a quest to get to know each other. And in the process, I get to know myself even a little bit better,
mhm,
and share something that I always try to bring out something, practical and helpful too in that process, something that these folks have overcome or done. And in getting to know them, it becomes an example of Ikigai for other people too. So my goal is to have an interesting conversation that they enjoy, professionally done. In the sense of it's a good quality thing to listen to, and come away with something practical that they can do in their own lives to enrich their lives.
yeah, I particularly like the episode that you recorded with Amanda Stern about journaling,
Mhm.
because it's a deep conversation about a practice or a topic that might be that became a trend at some moment, and people thought, no, it's just the kids that want to show off on Twitter or on social media that are putting an espresso cup with a notebook, and maybe they never write a single word, but they put it there. But when you listen to that conversation that you had with Amanda, it goes deeper, and it goes to discover the power, and that was a solid conversation that left me thinking there might be something there.
Oh, well, thank you. She has said, and I took this as like the biggest compliment, that it was the it was the best conversation she'd had on the topic. I mean, she is the queen of journaling, right? And she gets asked about it
Mhm.
all the time. And to me, that spoke to hopefully the environment that we're creating with that, and that is that people can really go deep and share those deeper aspects of themselves and what they're interested in, and connect with the audience as well and share that. So, oh, well, that's exciting to hear. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it was a good one. So now you have it on Apple Podcasts. You can find
Yes,
it there.
yeah, and
And how was the process of, because it's not as simple as recording. It takes a very rigorous process to start uploading it to different platforms.
yeah, the overall process. I mean, just the conversation is actually easy. I mean, that to me is like my tennis ball, right? I mean, I love the
Yeah.
conversation. I love the back and forth. But yeah, getting that together and doing the intro and fading the music, and then putting it on Apple Podcasts was both easy and difficult at the same time. It was
Hmm.
kind of weird, convoluted thing.
Why?
And well, two things. One, the whole Apple ID thing, and
Hmm.
I have an Apple ID for my home, and I was trying to get a separate one for that and that process, and then my computer wouldn't use that Apple ID because my computer is
Hmm.
logged in under my Apple ID, and anyway, all that kind of stuff. But then once it was done, it was quite easy, and then more people can access it, and that was my drive behind doing it, was just making it more accessible. And the reason I didn't do it on the first episode was because it was going to take me forever to get the episode out, and I thought, you know what, let's just do it. And it's what I teach in my Ikigai practice, and so I tried to uh, practice what I preach a little bit and not wait for perfection and just get it out there. And now, of course, it's all of them are up on the Apple Podcast site. You can get any of the three, and the fourth one's coming out here in 2 days. So people have a fourth one to listen
Looking
to. Yeah,
forward, looking forward to it.
yeah,
David, you started saying that above all, you're a grandpa. I
yeah.
mean, so that talks a lot about your priorities. What's in that 20% of your life? Um, what is the feedback that you get from your family about this this quest, this journey that you are in, on creating content and putting things out there, and what is it that they tell you?
Yeah, so it's interesting. My daughter, for example, is not on social media at all. She and her husband aren't on social media
Oh.
at all. But she is quite the storyteller herself, and a writer.
Mhm.
She's an attorney, and it is my belief that someday she'll branch out into writing stories. And well,
Mhm.
she's always been, and I think part of that is I'd like to think is from just our time when she was young, and read to her a lot, told a lot of stories, doing dad jokes for a long time. So I've been doing dad jokes and puns and pulling that, and now I'm an advanced. So someone told me the other day, "So you're exceptionally good at the dad jokes." I said, "Well, I'm a grandpa, so that's like an advanced dad. So I have to step up my game. I can't stay with the
Yeah.
old the old dad jokes." But
Level unlocked.
yeah. So they, I mean, they support me, and they're encouraging, and appreciate that. My lovely wife has has adapted to me being home more often after I retired from corporate world. Right after that, the pandemic hit, so she got like a double
Mhm.
dose of Dave, and
David.
that was so she, worthy of sainthood, just for putting up with me on a full-time basis. But very, very supportive, very helpful, and encouraging. It has always been for me. I mean, I met my wife through radio. I don't want to divert from where you were going, but she she was working at a retail clothing store, and they played our station in there. And I don't remember exactly how the conversation started, but a friend of mine whose sister I had gone out with for a while, and who dumped me unceremoniously. Um, we were still friends, and she goes, "Oh, you like that?" She goes, "Yeah, I know that guy. I'll give him a call and tell him to play us a song." And so she calls me on the hotline, and I answered it. And she said, "Yeah," and then she said ended up setting my wife and I up on a blind date, and we have been together ever since. And so it was radio that brought us together, and then I wanted to get married and wanted to marry her, and radio was such a crazy business that was when I began exploring other options. Because my drive to be a famous disc jockey was far less than my drive to marry that blue-eyed girl that I'm still married to.
That's a beautiful story, David. That's a
Yeah.
beautiful story, and it's great to see and great to hear. I've read different parts of the story, and I could talk with you for the whole day and put it up there because I read your stories every day, and there are many of them that are amazing around your family, around your professional life, and it it's great to see when a person is able to link his life, in this case, to the way that you are helping others and the way you are just putting a text that might help and might give comfort to others in a very difficult life. So kudos to you for that. And speaking of that, and before leaving, I want to talk to you about a section that you have on your LinkedIn post for Saturday when when you give a shout to different creators. I have met so many good people through it. Um, for it comes to my mind, Ingrid Lil, the
Hmm.
talent that she was. I even took her workshop, and I'm
Oh,
really
really?
bad at writing, really bad at writing. But I said like, wow, this is one of the best um, decisions that I made. So tell me about it. Tell me about why you are doing it, and how do you decide who goes there? Because it's like you have a touch to discover that talent that sticks with us for the rest of
Oh,
the of our life.
well, thank you again for the kind words. And yeah, I I love LinkedIn. I think it's a great place. It's a great place to meet people. I value the friendship that we've established and gotten to know each other, even though this is the first time we've talked to each other. um,
Yes, it
but
is.
but the the stuff that gets pushed is, I call it leaders got to lead stuff. Just the most obvious, things. A leader's got to develop his people, or some, trite stuff like
Mm,
that. And that gets so much attention. And yet there are some brilliant people, Ingrid being one of them, like you said,
yeah.
just brilliant people, wonderful talent, and bringing something special to the world. And they don't always get the attention. And so I decided Saturdays just to start highlighting some. And it's just a little thing. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's just a paragraph. I try to share some special aspect about the person, but then invite people to go check them out. Much deeper, because you can't tell a wonderful story about a person in a paragraph. At least I can't. But yeah, there's so many great people out there, and I do try to find, sometimes some themes. Like a few weeks ago, a couple guys who are consultants, and if you just look at their business
Hmm.
stuff, they're just consultants. But man, they take it so much deeper, and they bring an art form to it. And so I put both of them on the same weekend. because I wanted to highlight that
Mhm.
and get people to go beyond they talk business, but like the one guy, he shares, Matthew's his name, he shares artwork with his
Yeah.
posts. And I mean, he's curating all this great artwork. And I love every picture he's ever put up. And I'm like, this is so cool. And it's so much more
Yes.
than just not just the consulting he does, because that's important too. Um, Same thing with David Jones was the other guy that week.
Yeah.
Matthew Sanchez. And anyway, uh, that's kind of the idea behind it. And then I just knew some people and started doing it. And then I've had people point me at others. And then I just spent a lot of time like noticing quirky things. If I see somebody, one guy draws penguins, and I was like, this is interesting. I should check him out. Why is he
Yeah.
drawing penguins? And it
Yeah.
turns out some really great stuff. But yeah, and I'd love to even do something more and have some place where we could curate that and you could just go, but I haven't figured that out yet. But I want to. There's so many bright lights out there, and
Yeah.
I want to share them with others. Yeah.
Well, but I have to thank you because you are curating my timeline on LinkedIn. So I see posts from many people that I got to know through you. So thank you very much. And David, thank you very much for sharing this conversation with me, with everybody that connected to it. Um, if you want to reach out to David. He's one of the most generous guys that I have met in terms of responding. He's always responding on LinkedIn and direct messages and the comments, and you see him like connecting different people. Uh, Thank you very much, David. I cannot thank you enough for the opportunity to talk with you. Hopefully, we have a second time to talk because I have many other questions and many other stories that I want you to tell. But I just want to thank you for this.
Been my great pleasure. Thanks.